All right. Good afternoon, late afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first DNSOP session for this IETF. I'm Tim, that's Suzanne, that's Benno. So we'll get going on this. So. Oh, I don't see him.
What are you talking about?
Warren's our AD. He's out. I saw him because he just asked me about something. Paul's doing minutes, and Paul had a request that if there's not a lot of mic lines, if you could use this one so we can get all the name tags. And if there are a lot of discussions, then, well, that's just good times. And Dan, there's somebody's doing JabberScribes. Up there is. Thank you, Mr. York. So you know the note well. It's early in the IETF. This is the latest one. So whatever you say, please pay attention to it. The blue sheets are going around. Please fill those in. This is only the hour session, so it's going to be pretty short. We'll keep things to a minimum. We've got an update on the current work. We've got some hackathon updates and some other current working group business. So, some notes tomorrow afternoon. If you're looking for a good time, there's the applications doing DNSOP, ADD. So promise to be excitement. So it's right after lunch. So non-browser, you know, as you can well imagine, this will be good. So lots of good discussion in there. So just giving you a heads up on that. There's a draft in the int area that came to our attention on provisioning domains, and the terminology is a little different. You know, everybody overloads the word domain a lot, but it's in this working group last call, and it's about doing stuff over multiple interfaces, and it's definitely, there is some relevance there, and it's sort of like that stub to resolver problem where the stub has to sort of keep track of what domain is doing, what interface is doing what, basically. So this seems to be big in the mobile world, and also V6 with multiple stuff going on. So, of course, this happened today, the IETF workshop, but tomorrow afternoon during the open meeting, there'll be a good discussion on understanding the role of registrars in DNSSEC deployment, and so that was a hot talk, so you guys should pay attention to that. Moving on to the documents updates. So we've got the algorithm update since last meeting, and the capture format's been in, it's been in Auth48 for like a year now. It's slowly making its way. So they've gotten all the references sorted out, and I think they finally, you and Sarah finally sort of nailed everything down. So, but it's been a long one for them. So we have three things, we're actually a couple things, more than three things in working group last call. The no response draft, which had a lot of discussion for a while, and it's kind of gone silent, but with all the Flag Day conversations, you know, since everybody's getting to run Flag Day now, I feel that it's time to sort of put this to working group last call. So folks, send comments to the list, approve publication, don't approve it, you have comments. I think they've done a great job of cleaning it up. Mark's been patient with me, so I appreciate that. So please, we'd like to hear some stuff about that. Even if you want to get up in the mic line and just yell about it. I think it's, you know, this is the time. 2845 finally, we finally got this through working group last call. I think this started in Prague 2 summers ago, and it's done the right updates to fix the TIGSIG problem. So again, that one's ready to, you know, please send some comments about that. Serve stale, it's working in group last call until tomorrow, till the 23rd. So we definitely want to hear about that. And there's one more, yes, extended error. And this is partially my fault. I need to wrangle the authors a little more on that. There are some comments we need to get sort of fixed up. And then there was a discussion about the IANA registry is not really documented in the current draft, and it probably needs to be. Wes is looking sort of confused. And so that sort of came up, but please correct me.
Yeah, so Warren and I actually met a month ago or so and worked through the R code missing number of bits issue. Got it all done, and then an hour before the deadline, of course, I finally got around to submitting it without checking, say, some of the other points in the document that listed the wrong number of bits and things like that. So I apologize for that. That's my fault. There is an IANA registry section.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, there has been for a long time, and using current boilerplate text, if I recall, too. But I need to go back and double check that it matches.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it does. Though.
And I believe like Mr. Eastlake had some comments that are still sitting out there in my inbox.
A brief reminder, mention your name on the mic.
Yeah. Thank
Wes
you.
Hardiker?
I'm
Wes
I'm
Hardiker.
Wes Hardiker from ISI. Yes, there are other outstanding comments. We wanted to hit the R code one because that seemed like the biggest, and I wanted especially the implementers that have started tinkering with it. Go look, we did change the packet format, so unfortunately it had to be done. So go look at that. But the other comments are more minor and are just text changes.
Okay.
So I'll try and get that out in the next couple of weeks.
Cool. Thank you. So, and that's sort of on me to wrangle you authors about that. So you'll hear from me soon.
Yeah, with respect to the IANA registry specifically, I think it was me that flagged that. And I think there was some question. One of the things I was hoping people will pay attention to when reviewing this document is whether the extension mechanism proposed and the policy on the IANA registry is optimizing the usefulness of the document and the mechanism.
And the reason I'm looking back is because this fancy monitor here is not working. So I have no idea why. Couple things in call for adoption, DNS server cookies. Actually, we believe that has wrapped up and should be adopted. And then the Yang model, that's going through some interesting discussions and kind of understand where things are going on that. So those will wrap up here pretty soon. And then we have some updates on some current stuff. So Shuman sent us this about the multi-provider DNSSEC. They've made some changes to it. They've added some sections, and actually looks like they've cleaned up some stuff. And from looking at the updates and looking at it and talking, it does seem like it's getting close to working group last call. We'd like some folks to review it, but it's getting a lot more discussion, especially among the vendors and stuff, about how to do DNSSEC across multiple providers. So I appreciate that. So all TLD. So one of the authors came to us and said, hey, we think this is still useful. We want to know if the working group wants to work on this. We have, we're not, we felt that we're not sure if the working group actually has the energy to sort of discuss namespaces, because it sort of turns into not really DNS, but more architecture kind of discussions. So, if we feel that we get a lot of feedback, like, oh yes, we want to discuss this and kind of beat this down some more, our suggestion, we thought about this, and we feel that this would be a great document to send through the internet area and send it through the general area and have the ADs basically shepherd it, because it's a standards track. It discusses, it's either application or internet. I said application, they said internet, but have it through the general area and have it discussed that way. And then you can still get the standards track, which we feel, which is what the ISG is basically trying to get us to do anyway. And that'll still get the proposed standard, and that's better than doing AD sponsored, for example. So now I haven't told the intakees this, but it's like surprise. But because I do think if you think about sort of TLD space, it's more, I think it's more in that area. So than it is, sort of it's sort of an ops area sort of thing. We can have a former AD stand up to the mic and tell us, I'm sure there's one back there sort of hiding in the corner. So this one, oh, great. Yes, moving DLV to historic. This is fantastic. So, sorry, Mr. Sullivan.
Hi, my name is Andrew Sullivan, and I work for the Internet Society, but I don't speak for them right now. On the previous item, if this working group can't come to agreement that this is a good idea or a bad idea, and you send this off to, say, the gen area, my prediction is that they're going to say, I wonder what the DNSOP we need to think about that.
And that's just true.
So this may be an opportunity to prove that we can do routing loops in the IETF itself. But are you sure that you actually want that problem?
I don't know what problem I want, and I want the group to tell us what problem to give us, right?
Okay.
Does the group want us to sort of chase this, and I think if we, I don't think they have the energy for it. Maybe they do, and maybe I'm going to be shocked. But I'm thinking of how can it be moved forward, because we've been asked to move it forward, And if we can't get the energy here, how can we do it? Or maybe it doesn't get, it dies a slow death that, you know,
Well, I mean, this would not be the first thing ever to die a slow death
No,
at DNSOP. So, I mean, I guess what I'm suggesting, and you know, my name was, I don't know if it still is, but it was on this at one point. My feeling is that it would be wise for us to make the decision, you know, to put this to bed or to death,
Yep.
you know, sort of expeditiously, if that's what we actually plan to do, because I'm just nervous that what's going to happen is we're going to spend another spin. We're going to send this to the gen area list. I don't know if you've been reading the gen area list anytime recently, but I'm not sure that this is going to attract a whole lot of attention there.
so, no, that's a very good point. So, Jared.
Jared Mach, Akamai. Just following on what he said, when we have routing loops actually in backbones, eventually TTL expires and it drops on the floor. that actually may be the most appropriate solution here. Is just drop this.
So,
Paul Walkers. I'm also a little uncomfortable with continuing with this document, not for any of the content of it, but because when this whole mess happened with Tor and their special domains, we sort of froze all new special domains so that we wouldn't get more people trying to quickly sneak in more of these proposals. And now we're coming up with our own proposals to do this. So it feels a little weird to me to continue this document.
no, it does. And I think one of the conversations,
There was a slightly different history of that.
was we probably, you know, like somebody said, we need a TLD for NX domain, we need a TLD for, you know, answerable domains, et cetera, which seems like, wow, that's, you know, that's lots of TLDs, right? So yes, okay, but very good point.
If I could.
Oh, yeah.
What we did was step back from delegating new special use names until we had done some other substantive work in the working group, which we did with the problem statement document, which is now RFC.
Something.
And we asked for further guidance from the ISG because we said we didn't know how to proceed beyond the problem statement listing the issues. One of the things that was suggested that we go back to was this document, which actually predated the problem statement RFC. Another document we were asked to consider was a draft that I wrote and that the working group was not interested in taking up. So it's not that we stopped and then proposed our own change to the registry. If we want to advance this document, we can.
That's Hardiker, ISI, no hats, I think. The reason that this document has stumbled so much in this group is that we can't come to some decisions that turned out to be hard, right? They're not easy. Some of them are political, some of them are technical, whether you delegate it signed or unsigned, you know, how you deal all of that. That makes it hard, and it makes us not want to do it because we can't necessarily come to agreement. I think, on the other hand, if you look at the side of is it needed, there's been a lot of community members outside the IETF. I don't say inside the IETF. We have a solution, but there's a lot of other people that have indicated a high level of frustration for not having something like this in a delegated play space of their own. And granted, I hate first come, first serve. That's a horrible answer to anything, but if they're unable to register themselves in a global namespace, that's problematic. And I don't know why they can't use URNs either, but they don't. So if we're unwilling to solve this problem, and the world thinks that this is a problem, we're at an odd space.
So, Warren Kamari with no hats other than an author. Quickly responding to what Paul Voda said, much of the purpose of this was actually to sort of corral stuff like .onion off in its own place. But I think that both myself, and I haven't spoken to my co-author, but I think both of us are fine if this dies. We just don't know what the working group wants. It was really interested at one point. If they no longer are, but it would be nice to know. I suspect that if we were to send it to Gen or Int or anywhere else, they would say, this looks remarkably DNS-ish. Why don't we send it to DNSOP? And that would be sad.
I am Paul Dixie. I guess no hats. I don't come to these meetings very often, and so I'm behind on my procedural knowledge. But first, I want to agree with Wes. something like this is kind of needed, just like 1918 was kind of needed. And that's my personal view. But my professional view is that if we're going to do nothing, we should find a way to record the road not taken and the reasons we didn't take it, so that people who are tempted to throw it back at us can actually look at a negative RFC that says, don't do this, and this is why. And they'll know that that is the answer they would get from DNSOP, rather than not being able to find some answer. I don't know if there's such a thing as a negative RFC, but this would be a call for one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Personally, I think something like this probably is needed, but I'm not sure how to go about it. And I think Paul is right. We should record it either way, right? We need to sort of lay the path out for people moving forward. So, so maybe, oh, sure. We'll talk to you. Okay, how's that? So maybe something slightly more, so obsoleting DLV, everything was positive about this. We heard no negative feedback at all. So we did our little research and figured out there's several different ways to do it, figured out the right process, which kind of put the little bit of onus on the working group, but not much, and then shoved it all on the AD, which was like, hey, sounds great to us. So pretty much by the end of IETF, I hope to get any comments, sort of editorial comments about it. I believe it's all Matthias did a great job on sort of putting it all together. And then at that point, we'll do some data tracker stuff and we'll send it over to Warren and we'll start that process to move everything to historic. So anybody have any sort of feedback on that, that would be great. But the document is simple, straightforward, well written. Can't say anything but good stuff about it. So, and we get rid of DLV, right? I think that's a good day. So, TCP requirements, they did a version recently, and it looks like I went through the document, it looks like they've covered all the to-dos and the missing things that they were sort of trying to fill in, and we feel it's pretty close to working group last call, so we'd like to get a little bit review, and we'll probably do that here sometime this summer. The next one is Zone Digest. Yep. Another one of Dwayne's. And the last update introduced a bigger change than sort of, and we haven't heard much comments on that, but that's in the same place. We feel that's really ready for working group last call as well, once we hear some good reviews and things of that nature. And then 7816 biz, actually, I don't know what's going on with that. We have to go figure that out. So. Is that it? Yep, so what else we're working on? Stuff's in the data tracker. We have things in GitHub. The links are in there. So today, the agenda, because it's only an hour, actually the first thing is the hackathon results. Willem's going to be doing those. And then he's going to give us an update on the server cookies. And then Paul's going to talk about 7606 biz, which we first thought was ready for working group last call, but now it's not. He's got a couple things to fix. And then the latest terminology spin. So, and then most of the big stuff is for tomorrow because this is a short meeting. So I think that's it. Any other comments, things to say? Then we'll get to it then. Willem?
Yeah, okay. So these are the results of the DNS track at the hackathon held last weekend. We had a gallimaufry of 17 eclectic DNS hackers working on 10 projects, which could roughly be divided in 4 teams. One was about DNS privacy, one about DNS support for specific network environments, provisioning, and miscellaneous, with only 1 project in it. So we had Pallavi Ares and Han Tsang work on XOT, which is zone transfer over TLS. They worked on a client implementation for it in the DNS Java library. Petr Spacek created a DO proxy with a fast CGI interface so that it can be used with any web server. And we had Witold preparing bind9 for dot and do. Then the DNS for specific network environments. Stefan Boortsmeijer, he already implemented earlier the resource record type for the identifier locator network protocol. But a name server or a resolver actually needs to do some additional processing to make that work. And so he worked on that. And he had a working implementation in NOT and a work in progress for Embound. Mark Andrews had worked on translating IPv4 addresses into IPv6 prefixes for DNS 6.4, not 6.4 environment for bind9. So if you download the slides and you want to try out some of the hacks, there's a link to the GitLab repository with the patches so that you can patch bind9 and try it out for yourself. DNS provisioning. So I worked with André and Witold and remote participant Peter Lexis on DNS cookies interoperability. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it later on. Yeah, this is also interesting. Mark Andrews and Tim Bottenberg worked on the DNS timeout resource record. It's a resource record for provisioning a DNS zone with DNS updates, with resource records that have a expiry time. And so here again are the references to the ISC GitLab, which contain these patches. Oh, yeah, and finally, my colleague Rolf Dolmans worked on HTTPS SVC, which is alternative for a name, I suppose. Instead of that, the name server provides the dynamic addresses for a name at the apex. The work is done in the browser or the program that resolves the HTTPS URL by following the references mentioned by the HTTPS SVC resource record. And finally, in the category miscellaneous, we had a YAML output from Dick and Delph by Evan Hunt and Paul Hofman. So Evan first wanted to implement, or he was thinking about implementing JSON output in the RFC 8427 format for DNS, but he preferred to output in YAML because it's more readable. And he discussed this with Paul, who is the main author of the JSON format. And Paul agreed. And this is now already used in Paul's RSSEC proof of concept root server management framework for latency and resilience. So that's the results of the hackathons. We had lots of interoperability and also between the different work groups.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see that existing and new work is being implemented in the different pieces of software, and from prototype, proof of concept to production code. Thanks. Next up. Oh, one moment. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
For the DNS server cookies. Yeah.
DNS server cookies, that's right. So DNS server cookies are a DNS native protection mechanism against amplification attacks. But to be helpful, it needs to be implemented everywhere. And so multi-vendor cooperation is desirable. This is how they work. If a client creates a cookie, which is more or less a nonce actually, sends it to the server. So the client is a resolver, and the server here is a authoritative name server. Name server creates a server cookie based on the client cookie, sends that back to the client, and then later on the client returns its own cookie plus the server cookie to the same server, and the server can recognize that this server cookie can only be baked by itself, because it's also using a server secret to make the cookie. And so it knows that the client is a returning client and it's not a spoofed source IP address. So, and this is good because authoritatives can then, if they see the cookie is correct, provide larger answers or and do not do response rate limiting. So here's the problem that we had before with DNS cookies. The recipes that were used by the servers to bake the cookies were different, so that if a cookie was made by Bind9, so to say, it was not resolver did not like that cookie and disposed of it. So we had a draft to make sure that cookies were made with the same recipe and that all the different DNS servers would make the cookies in the same way. And we had a hackathon project at the IETF104 in Prague and managed to have interoperable server cookies between Bind9, PowerDNS, NSD, not DNS, and Unbound. And after that success, we had a merger with a draft from Donald Eastlake and Mark Andrews that were also addressing the problem with the existing cookies. The changes that we did to the new draft were that a fix of a mistake, server cookies needed to be based on not just the client cookie, but also the client IP address. We use only SIP hash 2.4 for the algorithm. We created the IANA subregistry for different versions or different recipes to make cookies. And in the draft we had some operator advice on server secret rollover and on implementation advice on how to facilitate smooth rollovers and an appendix with test factors. So different implementations can check if the recipe is the same as the one described in the draft. So last hackathon, we had again a new round of implementing DNS server cookies with this new recipe and had interoperability testing between Bind9, PowerDNS, NSD, and Inbound, which was successful. Another thing that came from the hackathon is that in the draft it stated that the client cookie, or it recommends that the client cookie is generated from the client IP address, but this is quite impractical to implement. So the reason for this is IPv6 privacy extensions. So what you would like to avoid is that a cookie reveals the same source, so to say, if the IP the source IP address changes. But there's no easy way to do this for UDP, a UDP socket. It's stateless. If you create it, it does not have a source IP address yet, only after it's sent out, and then it's too late. Thus, we want to modify this text a little bit to recommend for resolvers to not use the client IP address when sending out or when creating cookies, but recommend for stub resolvers to indeed use the client IP address, because those are the parties that benefit the most from the privacy extensions as well. So that's the status. Yeah, there was a call for adoption, which finished last Saturday.
Indeed. Yeah.
So
it's a working group document right now, and it's a pretty straightforward draft.
Yeah.
It repairs it repairs an omission in the original DNS cookie draft, RFC. So thank you for the implementations, the interop test. So we would actually 2 days ago we wanted to go straight for a working group last call, but I understand the authors want to straighten out some issues. But it's also for the room to pay attention on this document, because it's already very good, very well shaped. We want to put actually.
So what we want to do now is update this text on creating the client cookies, and then submit it to make it a work group
DNSOP draft,
and then perhaps create production quality implementations between all the different vendors, and ask a operator that uses Anycast to test if it's
excellent
working for them, and then
Thank you.
I think that's
Yep. Any questions, comments? No? Thank you. Thank you, Willem. Now, let's give applause. Start a new tradition.
This is the part where I start getting feedback. This is where the part where you start what? Start getting feedback. Okay. So yes, I think I'll look this way. That's still
Hoffman, thank you. Yeah, it's of inconvenience. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So you're probably going to be out in time, because both this and the next one will probably be fairly short. So as hopefully everyone is familiar, this isn't going to work with me turning around. Warren and I are writing 7706 BIS. We've talked about it before. It's still in process, but we're getting close. We're still interested in stuff. Next slide, please. So it's getting close to done, but it is not done. And what we have done, which everybody asked for, the obvious stuff, is we updated the examples from 7706 because now we have a bunch of implementations and common software. So that we think is done, and we would love people to take a look at the examples. But we actually have some to-dos that we left in that we haven't done, so we need to do those. One of them is that 7706, due to working group discussion leading to 7706, we didn't put the use cases in really well, and they have now changed since 7706. So we need to put those in and have them discussed on the list. We can put words in. If there's silence on the list, I'm going to take that as no one's reading the list, because I know a lot of people cared about this when we did 7706. So you're still going to care about it now. And I'm talking to people in the room who are not just Andrew Sullivan. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people remember Andrew was the one who got up to the mic and was very active on the list for 7706. But a lot of people are like, yeah, what he said, or no, I disagree. So there may be that much here, and that's okay. Getting the use cases correct in this document is going to be very important for people reading it 5 and 10 years later, because in fact, the way that the root zone happens changes over time. And people need to understand why were we talking about it in a certain way in 2019 or 2020, depending. And we also have to explain more exactly why are we here on this. So not just the use cases, but what got us to this point. So again, Warren and I will put words in, we'll do a new draft, but we do expect the working group to actually look at it. I mean, if everyone only wants to do a working group last call, that's fine, but generally working group last call is mostly useful for, we've already looked at it and we think it's pretty done. And I think these two might be a little bit useful for people to look at. So, and then we also have to go through and really do a careful comparison with 7706 so that the section that says changes from 7706 is actually complete. Last slide. So we'll have, I haven't told Warren this, but we will have another draft by the end of August. Nod your head yes. That's a month from now. Okay, so a scrunched up face with a nodding yes. So we will most likely get a draft before the end of August, and then we'll ask for a working group last call. But if, what? No. Warren's saying end of July, and I'm saying no, because I also have a life. And I would like to go home for that life. So, but, you know, again, we're not in a rush, so we're not like, oh, we need to have this through at a certain time. So we want lots of review, but we're getting close-ish. Okay? Questions? Oh.
Hi, Puneet from Google Public DNS. So there's a restriction in the draft which says that the root server is only accessible locally.
Yes, that's also in the title.
Right, which is fine if you're running a small scale setup, but if you're running a cloud scale resolver, then everything's not going to be on the same machine. So is there some way to word that into the document?
Are you saying that you want it worded where it doesn't have to be on the same machine, or to say we know that there's that restriction?
So I think wording so that it doesn't have to be on the same machine. I think the main point you're trying to get to is like you want to limit access to the server. I think if we say that explicitly and allow running on a non-local.
Can you go back one slide? So make the use cases explicit, we're going to have that conversation then. I was hoping that no one would say that, but since you have, that wording will cause this. So, okay. It's not as simple as saying, oh, let's just loosen this up, because that's why 7706 actually said it has to run on localhost. We've expanded it off of running on localhost, but now saying, oh, it needs to be close-ish, yeah, that may not work. So we'll have that discussion.
All right, thanks.
Giovanni again. Paul, one clarifying question. I'm not sure if it's covered in 7706 or you intend to cover in here, but if you get like the root zone, the TLDs there have a fixed NS record, fixed TTL.
Actually, there's a weird echo. I'm not understanding.
All right. Can you hear better now?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So my question is, if you run this locally or in your environment there, and every record under the root zone, the NS records have a TTL of 2 days, but if you ask child delegation, you can have a different TTL value. So if your clients connect to your server, I'm not sure if it's covered in this draft, I don't think it is, but or 7706, but which TTL are going to return to your client, the one on the root zone or the one in the child delegation?
We explicitly don't say how to run your authoritative server. So if you run an authoritative server that munges TTLs or lies or whatever, that's your fault.
Yeah, but like if my client connected, oh, you want to take that? Yes.
He and I've gone over this a bunch of times. Wes Hardiker. So ISI. So I created the local root project at ISI, and one important thing to understand about a local copy of the root and the way that 7706 works. Thank you, Warren. Is that really all you came up here for? One important concept of how the local root or the hyperlocal root or 7706 works is that it only answers authoritatively on the address for as if it was the root server. So when it is answering for a TLD and it's saying you need to, here's the NS record set for the TLD, properly behaving resolvers will then go ask the TLD what they think things should be. And if the TTLs vary, it should be, and your paper nicely proves that that's not always the case, but it should be that you believe the child's values as authoritative.
The same result, but a different way to answer that is to say, this is no more authoritative than you asking an actual root server. So you will do exactly what you would have done.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
So not for this next version, but for the version after. Oh, sorry. Puneet offered or suggested another use case. Are you open for more use cases?
Oh,
from the
sure,
room?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
I will write up some of the use case stuff, or Warren and I will write up soon.
Yeah.
And then we will ask for discussion on that.
Okay.
And if I didn't get it the way that Puneet asked for or whatever, or others, that will come around. And there have been other people who've asked for that, where local, the definition of local stretches well beyond what I would want. And I've said no on that, but maybe we can have something closer to local.
Thank you.
Oh, and we're still good time-wise. Okay,
Yeah.
so this one hopefully will be even shorter. So I have mentioned this at a previous one, but a bunch of people have questions or have been wanting to not refer to technologies we're working on now or have worked on in the past by their draft name and by their RFC number. So terminology comes up. And so this is a draft with very limited updates to the terminology document just for these. Next slide. So, oh, that came out smaller than I want, but I think still readable. This just is those 6 terms. At this point, the draft is just those 6 terms. And the reason why it's just those 6 terms is that seems to be all of the terms that people have sort of half agreed on in this space. It's not planned to be, let's open up terminology for all the other new terminology. It's just these. And these terms are not fixed in stone. I mean, this is a request to have this become a working group document. People might want to change the names. They might want to change the abbreviations. That's all fine. But the idea is to have those in a document from here. Next slide.
Yeah. You want to take questions now or just finish the presentation?
Do I want to?
Oh, take the question?
No. The next slide is basically,
Okay.
so this is all we want to do.
All right.
Now we can have all of them.
George AP Nick. I say this every time you come up with the dictionary. The dictionary is good, but it will never be finished. You have to ship it. You have to stop accepting changes, which you just said. For the love of God, just ship it.
I disagree. I think it should be a working group document.
You think it should remain open?
I'm sorry?
You think it should remain open?
It's not
Because in
remain
3
open.
months-
No. The RFC is already done. These are additions to. Yeah.
How you're going to come back in the room with another 3 in a year's time, again and again and again, because we're
Well, wait,
always
now
going to
you've
make
gone
up new
past
words.
my intended retirement date with that third again, so I hope you're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, Paul Wouters, can you go back one slide?
Sure. So these are the ones that are in the current version of the draft before the working group has adopted it, if it's going to get adopted.
Right. So to me, these all seem fine, except the third one, which is DO 53. Because I'm really confused, because if we're calling DNS DO 53, then we should call DNS over TLS DO 53 over TLS.
So we could do that. So far, people have used these terms in other drafts, so I thought that they were okay, but we can change them.
Okay.
Excuse me, Brian Dixon, GoDaddy. For the very last one, ADD, I'm not sure whether I even want to open up this can of worms, but the last D in that, maybe we should put a little asterisk to say any of those first 4 TLS, DOH, 53, or whatever, i.e., we don't want to necessarily for ADD exclude 53.
Okay, so that's a discuss. Oh, great.
Yeah.
You turned it on and everything. Thank you. Now it's blinding me, but that's okay as well. So we might not. I think that that's a reasonable working group discussion. I would suggest we don't add new terms that have characters like an asterisk in them, but yeah.
Paul, Giovanni, SIDN. 253, you mean like only UDP? What about TCP?
Nope. Port 53 either. It says that explicitly.
Oh,
Yeah, because RFC 1034 and 1035 say that explicitly as well. Yeah.
Tim Wasinski, I literally thought that third one, and I guess I've been doing too much in the wrong place, was DNS over Route 53. So that obviously means I'm living the wrong life.
Right, and so other people in the room would want us to also add DO8, which I don't want to do.
Jim Reid, I think these definitions you've got there are fine, Paul, as they are, and I disagree with the suggestion that we should have ADD with an asterisk associated with it. The IETF has already said that the ADD list is applications doing the DNS. We should just stick with that and not mess around with it or put qualifiers or addendas to it. Leave it as is.
Because quite frankly, if going to what George Michael said at the beginning, unless you want me to come up a couple years now when there's another one, if we restrict it now, let's not do that.
Yeah, I think you should try and get a document out the door, Paul. Close this thing down rather than keep it alive forever.
Stefan Bartzmeyer. I have a reservation about the last one, add. First, add is the only one which is not defined in the RFC. All the rest are protocols clearly defined with the RFC. Add is a vague concept. Second, the definition of what is an application, what is a system, can be clear in some cases. In Unix, for instance, it's quite clear, but it can be different in other systems. On third, I observe that currently we have an add mailing list. The name comes from application doing DNS, and the list is going in many, many directions, most of them unrelated to application doing DNS. We will talk about that at the BOF tomorrow, but today it seems to me that unlike the others, add is very cloudy.
Right. So this is just the list. The draft actually has the definitions. If the definition seems too skoogey for you, I agree, we should nail it down. And if it doesn't seem like we can nail it down, I think it's reasonable to take it out. It's just that many people have been using that because of the problem where people say, DOE is bad because of X, and X would apply just as easily if an application was doing DOT. So, ADD, the whole idea was it's the A that's important here, not the other two. If we can get that right, great. And if we can't get it right, we should not add it to the terminology list. I agree.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, before leaving, not answering George Michael's question, but we still have to decide is a DNSOP working group document or not.
Right.
So
no, definitely.
This is a call for adoption.
I think I said that on the last slide, didn't I?
Oh, maybe I didn't.
No, I didn't even say that. I'm sorry. I meant to, because I thought that was what this was about, is that certainly anyone updating that RFC should be a working group discussion here, I think.
Yep.
So it might as well be a working group list, but if people don't want it, that's fine. I just think that people are using these definitions enough where it would be good to actually have it, be stated as updates the main document.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. We did hear positive feedback from the room, and we'll go to the mailing list for the. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We have any other business? We have 10 minutes. Something to entertain us. Otherwise, we will close this session here and open. The next DNSOP working group will be tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in Viger, if I'm correct. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh yeah, blue sheets.
Yeah. Anybody who didn't sign the blue sheets, sign them.
Where are the blue sheets anyway?
Oh, to the left or to the right?
Well, anybody who does have a blue sheet, hold it up so the people who haven't seen one will see one. I know you're out there somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.